Tonight on CFTK-TV News, tenants of a hotel that burned down are still seeking compensation. More information about a fire at the Kitimat ice rink has been revealed, and Justin Trudeau is being pressed about foreign interference in the last two elections.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cal Maslin, and here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond today. A new bill that allows First Nations to see themselves in the Land and Title Office has come into play. CFTK's Jaylene Matthews has more.
In current Canadian law, an individual can buy land, so can a corporation or a municipality. However, a First Nation cannot. In the past, nations have had to jump through figurative hoops in the system, like incorporating a company under the nation's name or other alternatives, in order to hold land. This antiquated system is now proposed to change, allowing First Nations to purchase land directly under their own name. Murray Rankin, Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, says it's a step in the right direction.
I'm not saying it's going to change the world, but it's a small step and an irritant that many First Nations over the years have told me was an unnecessary expense, an unnecessary hassle.
Speaking in legislature on the bill, Skeena MLA Ellis Ross emphasized that First Nations, including his own, have been getting around this barrier for a long time.
So the most valuable chunk of property in the town of Kitimat used to house the old hospital site. And the BC government at the time worked out an agreement with my band to purchase the property. We did that without Bill 13 on a government-to-government relationship.
Bill 13 aligns with the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, or UNDRIP, and Minister Rankin says it's all a part of reconciliation.
So there's a lot of things in that declaration, that UN document, that talk about land and holding land and making it easier. It's part of self-determination. It's so important for economic development that land is more readily available to First Nations to create community, to bring people home. All of that is part of reconciliation. And some tell me that the most important part of reconciliation is economic reconciliation.
Ross also highlighted the Kitimat LNG deal as a leading example of effective economic reconciliation action.
But you've already got a great foundation that was laid out in Kitimat for the LNG pipeline, for the LNG plant, for the forest and range agreements that were signed in 2006, with all the mining agreements, the environmental stewardship agreements, the communication protocol agreements, over 450 agreements signed by the BC government and First Nations from 2004 to 2017. That's a great foundation. Instead of ignoring it, you can build on it. And Bill 13 is a small piece in that, and I look forward to understanding more details about the mechanisms of Bill 13.
Bill 13 has received unanimous support so far and is expected to pass in legislature. For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
The Kitimat Fire and Ambulance Service has revealed their preliminary findings into the investigation of the March 17th Kitimat ice rink fire. However, the investigation is not done yet and no firm conclusions have been reached, but initial findings suggest the fire may have originated from a faulty or malfunctioning wall-mounted heater located inside of the referee's room, according to the Kitimat Fire and Ambulance Service. While the information is preliminary and is subject to further investigation and analysis, the department is working closely with the insurance investigators in order to examine the heater and conduct more comprehensive testing. In a press release, the District of Kitimat stated that it appreciates the public support while work is underway to adjust recreational programming. It was 2 years ago this day when a fire started by candles tore through the Winners Hotel in Gastown. 2 people died and many more were injured and left temporarily displaced. As CTV's Kevin Chirac reports, former tenants are still fighting for justice, compensation, and accountability, and warning some of the video may be disturbing to some.
You guys, this was 2 years ago.
Wendy Gaspard recalls the terrifying moment she had to run for her life, escaping the inferno that destroyed her home and killed her neighbors Marianne Garlow and Dennis Gay.
I looked back and it was horrifying. What was behind me, I didn't have time to go even knock on their doors, and I heard screaming, I really did. And it was horrifying, and it still haunts me today.
I shake 24 hours a day now. I never shook this much in my life. This was my home.
Jennifer Hansma is the plaintiff in a class action lawsuit against property management company Atira, the City of Vancouver, and Winters Residence Limited.
They need to accept responsibility for what they've done. It wasn't our choice to have our alarms turned off. It wasn't our choice to have the sprinklers turned off. It wasn't our choice to be in the fire.
Earlier this year, a coroner's inquest examined what went wrong, hearing evidence that fire extinguishers and the sprinkler system failed. The jury made 25 recommendations calling for improved safety measures, better staff training, and higher standards. Atira says it supports all of the recommendations and is making improvements.
Have you ever received an apology from Atira?
Not a single one.
In a statement, Atira's CEO wrote, "Our thoughts are with the family and friends of Miss Garlow and Mr. Gay, as well as the former tenants and the community who continue to remember and grieve for those lost. This tragedy has left its mark on the tenants, the community, and the entire team at Atira who support them." Former tenants and supporters rallied today demanding justice.
We're coming after you.
Hansma says she expects the trial to begin by September.
We're coming for them. We're going to get them.
Kevin Chirac, CTV News, Vancouver.
Coming up next, Canada's largest police union had some not-so-nice words for BC about Surrey's police transition. Welcome back. The largest police union in Canada has slammed BC, saying Surrey is a clear example of how not to do a policing transition. It's the latest volley in a complex and ongoing battle as the provincial government pushes Surrey closer to a city force. CTV's Michelle Bernoro has more.
Their job is to keep Surrey's streets safe, but their future employment remains tangled up in politics.
It's unfortunate that policing in the city of Surrey or the province of BC has become politicized.
The National Police Federation is accusing BC's public safety minister of misleading statements. The union, which represents RCMP members, is demanding to know the details of the transition plan that will see the Surrey Police Service replace the RCMP.
We've been asking the province for a long time for that plan. So if there is one, which the minister alluded to, where is it? What is it? And can we help you get there? We've asked for numerous meetings with the ministry, and we have had radio silence.
We've made no misleading statements. What's clear when it comes to Surrey, and in fact policing, and the structure of policing in the province of British Columbia, that is the authority of the province of British Columbia.
This week, Surrey rejected the BC government's financial offer to help with the transition. CTV News has been asking Mayor Brenda Locke for an interview about policing for days now, but we continue to be told she is unavailable. A city spokesperson says at issue is that Surrey has not seen a transition plan.
It needs to find out, for example, can RCMP officers continue to work for the Surrey Police Service board? That's highly unlikely, but that is necessary if this transition were ever to take place.
He says there are too many unanswered questions about how the transition would look.
If you end up in a scenario where you've got two police chiefs, if that's what's contemplated, that the RCMP cover part of Surrey and the Surrey Police Service covers another part of Surrey, I mean, does that make any sense?
We've heard loud and clear from our members in Surrey that they are apprehensive about working under the command of the Surrey Police Service.
The NPF calls the work environment in Surrey unstable. The public safety minister has said more details on the transition plan will be revealed next week. Michelle Bernoro, CTV News.
There has been reaction over new legislation to ban protests and disruptions outside of schools. The demonstrations have largely been in opposition to SOGI, or sexual orientation and gender identity. Many called the province's decision a good first step, but some are critical of the move. CTV's Isabella Zavarisi has more.
Yes, tell your parents about it.
I don't know what it means. Ugly clashes like this have prompted the provincial government to draft a new law establishing so-called bubble zones around schools.
I'm pretty happy to see it. You know, like it was a stressful time, you know, at the start of the school year, having these protests at our daughter's elementary school.
More than a dozen of these protests were centered around SOGI, the sexual orientation and gender identity policies in BC schools.
You know, one disruption is one too many. 18 is a tremendous amount. This is our students' learning environment.
I have never seen the amount of protests that we've seen this, at least this year for sure. And these people, you know, these protests are intimidating.
On Wednesday, the province announced details to prevent disruptive behavior and aggressive protests within 20 meters of BC schools.
We've had people banging on school windows in British Columbia.
An extreme reaction to policies aimed at making classrooms more inclusive.
The issue is around information that's being provided within schools, which seems to be inappropriate in my opinion. We need to be looking at replacing SOGI, getting rid of it.
The Conservative leader goes so far as to say zones for student safety is siding with parents, characterizing it as an issue about free speech.
There's no hate in that. The issue is around parental rights.
Supporters and educators point out that a lot of research has gone into SOGI.
What we know about learning is that we learn and grow when our brains feel safe, and so we need to make sure that that's preserved.
You know, having read the SOGI 123 education plan, I know that it's age appropriate.
For those who support the legislation, it couldn't come at a better time to ensure schools remain places for all students to learn. Isabella Zavarisi, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast is set to see a chance of showers with a high at 3 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will be partly cloudy instead and have a low of 0 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should get a few clouds with their low at -9 degrees. On the North Coast, the upcoming week starts with rain and some clouds before becoming a bit more sunny, while the high shifts from 7 to 14 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, their next week or so should also be cloudy and rainy, then become sunny, while their high goes from 6 to 15 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the week for them is expected to see mostly sun with a few clouds, while the high bounces from 8 to 14 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is utility work, maintenance, roadside brushing, and vehicle incident, road sweeping, paving operations, plus the Usk Ferry is out of service and the cable car is in effect. Highway 37 has some slippery sections, while also having bridge maintenance, roadside brushing, and water pooling too. And the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery and muddy sections. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, BCE's president felt the heat from a parliamentary committee for recent and massive job cuts. Welcome back. Some fiery exchanges occurred when the head of BCE appeared before a parliamentary committee on Canadian heritage. BCE is the parent company of Bell Media and runs CTV. MPs wanted answers from Mirko Bibic about the thousands of jobs the company cut earlier this year. CTV's Adrian Gobrail reports.
Following Bell Canada's most recent layoffs, backlash was swift from members of Parliament, even from the Prime Minister. And today, Bell's CEO, Mirko Bibic, testified on Parliament Hill.
You could have chosen to prioritize workers with that money. You could have chosen to give consumers a break and make it more affordable for cell phone and internet fees, particularly at a time when people are struggling with the cost of living, but you chose greed. How do you justify that? Those are choices you made.
Thank you for the question. I would start with we are continuing to lower wireless prices each and every day to the point where our prices are fundamentally lower than they are in the U.S. In fact, I appeared on March 18th in front of Indu, and we established all those facts.
In February, Bell Canada Enterprises Inc., the parent company of CTV News, announced it was cutting 4,800 positions from its workforce, including multiple CTV newscasts and selling 45 of its 103 radio stations. Ahead of today's hearing in Ottawa, Bell issued this press release titled Facts Matter, saying in part that Canada's traditional media sector is in crisis due to changing consumer habits, technological disruptions, shifting advertiser demand, and vigorous competition from foreign streamers and global web giants. One communications professor believes Bell Media has a moral and regulatory responsibility to deliver, fund, and sustain a robust news division from coast to coast to coast.
We're losing a lot of really good journalists who provide an essential function within not just Canadian democracy, but any democracy. This cuts to the core of what we need in a democratic society.
During his opening remarks today, Bibick told the committee that Bell Canada pays nearly $2 billion in regulatory fees each year, while streaming giants like Amazon, Netflix, and Disney haven't paid a cent. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Substantial intelligence has been revealed at a public inquiry that foreign interference was happening during the last two elections, and now it's the Prime Minister's turn to answer questions about what he found out and what he's done about it. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
The Prime Minister received at least 2 of the 34 top-secret briefings CSIS gave on China's clandestine election meddling. Most of the intelligence centered on the 2019 election and the riding of Don Valley North.
The intelligence services had shared with him concerns that Chinese officials in Canada had been developing plans to possibly engage in interference in the nomination contest.
No action was taken despite several intelligence reports suggesting the Chinese government was using proxies to help Han Dong win the Liberal nomination, and that they helped organize a busload of international students to vote for him. The Minister of Public Safety at the time testified that the information wasn't clear.
I specifically inquired about was whether or not that there was any intelligence or suggestion that Mr. Dong was aware of this potential interference or in any way a willing participant, and the indication that CSIS provided me with that at that time was that they had no evidence.
Bill Blair also said he didn't hear any recording or see a transcript about Dong's alleged conversation with a senior Chinese official about delaying the release of the two Michaels, and he refused to answer if there was a wiretap.
I'm not going to comment on any aspect of my responsibility. It's not appropriate.
Justice Marie-Josée Hoque will now assess what she's heard from witnesses. She'll have less than a month to file an interim report by May 3rd. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 0.4 cents. The price of gold is up $1.40. Oil is up 64 cents, natural gas is up 1 cent, aluminum is down $2. In Toronto, the TSX is down 210.12 points, the Venture Index is down 3.57, in New York, the Dow Jones is down 475.84, and NASDAQ is down 267.11. Still ahead is a look at a recently deceased celebrity whose legacy is not exactly straightforward. Welcome back. O.J. Simpson has died at 76 due to prostate cancer. He's been both one of the most celebrated and controversial celebrities ever, devolving from football icon and actor to accused murderer. Millions were riveted by his trial that played out on TV in the 90s and led to a shocking acquittal. Joyce Malbon has more.
From football hero to Hollywood fame and fortune,
O.J. Simpson, as you've never seen him before.
O.J. Simpson had it all. His stunning rise and fall captivated America. Who can forget the savage murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, their rocky marriage allegations of abuse? She and a friend, Ron Goldman, were found stabbed outside Simpson's Los Angeles home.
911, what are you reporting? This is AC. I have O.J. in the car. He's still alive, but he got a gun to his head.
On the run, networks carried Simpson's stunning slow-motion car chase live. Eventually surrendering, Simpson was arrested and charged with their brutal murders.
Ron and Nicole were butchered.
In what was called the trial of the century, nearly 100 million watched, riveted by every detail.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
The verdict divided the country
Defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
along racial grounds. Celebrations erupted. Others were left in shock.
You know, it was a very divisive case. People hated him, hated me for representing him. It was divided along racial lines.
Nobody does it better than her.
O.J., trying to recapture the glory of his past, ran into more legal trouble. Ordered to pay the Goldman family $33 million in a civil trial, Simpson never paid them a cent, but ended up spending serious time in prison in 2007 for kidnapping and armed robbery in Nevada.
And I didn't know I was doing anything illegal. I thought I was confronting friends and retrieving my property.
Paroled after 9 years, once a legend, a superstar, a beloved idol, whose fall from grace is an American tragedy. Joy Malbin, CTV News, Washington.
BC says it's streamlining the process for forestry companies to salvage timber damaged by wildfires. BC made changes to the prices and fees for harvesting timber on Crown land, and the new pricing will make salvage more economical, speeding up efforts to regenerate forests. The fee changes came into effect April 1st. In the wake of last year's record wildfire season, BC had issued salvage cutting permits for almost 1.4 million cubic meters of damaged wood, the equivalent of 28,000 logging truckloads. That's all our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thanks for watching.